class today?
Really nice. I love when I actually need to spend 15 minutes on other material before actually getting into the Haftarah. Like, we need to understand the first chapter of Seudah to understand the Haftarah.
I said those words at the end under a proposal.
Oh, no, yeah, that's good. No, but like, you need to understand like what God tells him to do and whose life it is, what his children's names are, and so they really appreciate everything else that comes next. Today we had 6 or 7. I'd say it's sort of a group of like a dozen. And everybody will show up. Well, yeah, it's sort of like a dozen regular / semi-regular. Usually with anywhere. A little small one.
How are we setting up for the plenary? Oh, we are doing Maariv at 9:20. And Torah reading now too?
No.
Torah reading's not till like midnight.
Yeah. Maariv at 9:20. Then our lessons class at approximately 9:20. After Maariv, here.
40 minutes holding the class.
40 minutes. Herman called for
Sorry, the
Kiddush, Motzi, cheesecake, we have to go relative. And then back in here, snack back in here. At that point, the schedule is not, it doesn't have to be so strict.
mother, the grandmother.
Mother, the grandmother, 50, 75 people this morning had to get off their telephones or put on their mask, or I actually put one of the kids out to have a talk.
You don't have to telephone while they were listening.
You're totally
And it's not just, it wasn't just the volume of people, it was the attitude.
It was the attitude.
I think you were here somewhere.
Oh, I'm going to faint if I have to wear my mask. I'm going to,
Yeah.
I had jaw surgery and I can't breathe.
Yeah.
It was unreasonable in every
My
respect.
question is this, and not just unreasonable, it was wholly disrespectful.
Oh,
And intentionally, places up, and intentionally. It was yeah.
I tell you, I was once on a flight coming home from Israel and I went through Frankfurt. And it was the Lufthansa and then Air Canada. And it was talking about one of the Lufthansa stewards. Because we were already starting down the runway and there were still Orthodox people standing in the aisles, shouting back and forth. And he told me, he says, it's in the Lufthansa contract that they can't force them to do the Israel flight more than one.
Wow. 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 That's not good for the Jews.
No, it's not. But,
But it's 4 hours of that.
I have to tell you, because my brother-in-law is related to the Brahmin family, and the attitude wasn't kind. No, my brother-in-law. Not by me. Unfortunately, there are people.
Well, I suppose the good news is we're unlikely to see that ever again.
No,
It's less important.
That's right. Nobody remembers what the rabbi said anyway. We don't have to finish it. Are we live streaming this one?
Yes.
We are? Okay. All right, so. But my TV camera takes up. Okay.
Through the end of Maariv.
Hello, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Good afternoon. Welcome to Bet Tzedek. We are really lucky today. Danielle Silverman is going to daven Minhah. Woo! We're on page 226 in the Siddur Sim Shalom for Shabbat and festivals.
Ashrei Ashrei Beitecha, Odi Alelucha Selah. Tehillat Adonai daber pi, v'varak kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed, v'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ataver olam hallelujah, u'ba'al Tzion goel, Shmei Tashav Yaakov ne'em Adonai, v'ani b'safri. Ve'ata kadosh yoshev tehilot Yisrael, v'kara ze el ze ve'amar, kadosh kadosh kadosh, Adonai tzvaot melech ha'aretz kevodo, mekabelin dein midin amen. V'tisaeni ruach v'eshma acharei kol ra'ash gadol, Baruch kavod Adonai mimekomo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. ויבדחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך, אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
יעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי.
מחייכו נביומךו.
ולכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב אמרו
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ומעמיה.
וישתבח, ויפאר בשם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקדושה.
הבריחו.
לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה,
Imru, amen. Page 229, the ark is opened.
ואני תפילתי לך אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, הנני באמת אישך,
ויהי בן שרון, ויאמר משה, ומא אדוני ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, ואדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
גדלו לאדוני איתי, נרומם השמו יחדיו, לך
אדוני הגדולה בקרב, ויתפארת נצח והוד, כי חוב השמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני המלאכה, והמנסה לכל הראש, רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו לאדם רגליו קדוש הוא, רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. May be seated. The Torah reading this afternoon, Parshat Naso, begins on page 791 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It is Numbers chapter 4, verse 21. Naso has the distinction of being the longest parsha in the Torah. As the commentary in the Eitz Chaim points out, most of the first half deals with circumstances when one's place in the community is in question because of unusual behavior, and the second half deals with the offerings brought by each tribe as the sanctuary's dedication concludes. That second half of the Torah reading is also the parsha that we read for Hanukkah. Page 791, Numbers 4, verse 21. Amen.
Aaron Reuven ben Yaakov Aryeh Leib HaLevi במקום כהן ברוך שנתן תורה לישראל בקדושתו.
ואתם הבקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום.
Baruch Adonai Barak.
Baruch Adonai Barak L'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bach Rabban Mikol Hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten Torah.
Amen.
וידבר אדוני משה לאמור נשא את ראש בני גרשון גם הם לבית אבותם ומשפחותם מבין 30 שנה ומעלה בין 50 שנה תפקוד אותם כל הבעל מצוות צבא לעבוד עבודה ביום מועד זאת עבודת משפחות הגרשוני לעבוד ומסע.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher natan lanu Torat Emet Chei Olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Torah reading continues, verse 25.
Tama Shoshana Menachem V'chana Hasheni.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barak L'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ונעשה את יריות המשכן ואת אוהל מועד מכסהו מכסה התחש אשר עליו מלמעלה ואת מסך פתח המועד ואת כלי החצר ואת מסך פתח שער החצר אשר על המשכן ועל מזבח סביב ואת מיתריהם ואת כל כלי עבודתם ואת כל אשר יעשה להם ויעבדו על פי אהרון ובניו תהיה כל עבודת בני הגרשוני לכל מסעם ולכל עבודתם ופקדתם עליהם במשמרת את כל מסעם זאת עבודת משפחות בני הגרשוני ביום מועד ומשמרתם ביד איתמר בן אהרון הכהן.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'ha'olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Eliezer David ben Moshe HaShlisheet.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai V'rach L'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai V'rach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. B'nei Merari u'mishpachatam l'beit avatam kifkadotam meben 30 shana v'mala v'yad ben 50 shana tifkedem kol haba l'tzava l'avod et avodato el moed v'zot mishmeret masam l'chol avodatam b'yom moed karshei hamishkan uvricha v'amidav adanav v'amidei chatzer saviv v'yadnehem v'teidotam u'meitereihem l'chol kleihem l'chol avodatam ושמות תפקדו את כלי משמרת מסעם זאת עבודת משפחות בני מררי לכל אבותם באוהל מועד ביד איתמר בן אהרון הכהן ויפקוד משה ואהרון ונשיאי העדה בני הקהתי למשפחותם לבית אבותם מבין 30 שנה ומעלה ויד בן 50 שנה כל הבא לצבא לעבודה באוהל מועד ויהיו פקודיהם למשפחותם 2,750 אלה פקודי משפחות הקהתי כל העובד באוהל מועד אשר פקד משה ואהרון על פי אדוני ביד משה.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei nata b'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We rise as we're able for the lifting and tying of the Torah. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe ivnei v'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe, page 72. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, uzamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid baboker chasdecha v'munarcha b'leilot, alei asor v'lei navel, alei higion b'chinor, ki semachtani Adonai b'folecha, b'mayaseh yedecha aranen, magadlu masech Adonai, ma'od amku machshvotecha, ishbar lo yeda, usin lo yavin et zot, b'froch rishim kmo Esav, v'yatzitzu kol plei aven, l'ishadam adeyad, v'yatam arom lo lam Adonai, ki nei ovech Adonai, ki nei ovech yovedu, yidpardu kol plei aven, v'tarm kirim karni, baloti b'shem ranan, v'tabetini b'shurai, v'kamim alai m'rim tishmona oznai, sadika tamar yifrach, keres bavanon yizgeh, shetulim b'veit Adonai, b'chatzot Eloheinu yafrichu, O Genuvum Beseva, Tishanim Ranim Yeyu, Lagid Ki Ashadonai, Suri V'lov Latabo. Page 232.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki Niskav Shema Levado, Dol Eretz V'Shamayim V'Yar.
Yam Karen Liamo, Tila L'cho Chasidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Krovo, Hallelujah.
וצפודים לך כבוד צלב, נוחה יאמר שבנו.
Shuvanu Nevodafei Yisrael. Ashivenu Na'elecha V'Nashuva.
השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Page 233, we remain standing as we're able. Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
יברח ירותי וימליך מלכותי.
V'chayecha Nov Yomecha.
ידכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach. L'olam Omei Amaya.
אך וישתבח, ויפר ויתשמע ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקדושה.
Shabrichu.
אמן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה ואמרו.
Amen. Continue privately with the Amidah, pages 234 through 239. Those still davening are encouraged to conclude at your own pace. We turn back to page 234b for the repetition of the Amidah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Mekonei Hakov V'Zocher Chastei Avot ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה המלך עוזר ופוקד מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה
אמן.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע וכלכל חיים בחסד מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
אמן. נקדש את שמך בעולם. כשן שמעתי שמו טוב בשמי מרום, ככתוב יביאך וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמעתי שמו טוב בשמי מרום, ככתוב יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו, למתם ברוך
קדוש,
יאמרו.
קדוש, קדוש, אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו, למתם ברוך יאמרו.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimukomo V'divrei Kodshecha Katuv Lemor.
Imloch Adonai Le'olam Elohaisin L'dovador Aliyah.
Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohai El Tzion L'dor Vador. Hallelujah. L'dor Vador Negigod Lecha L'netzach Netzachim Kedusharcha Nagdish
B'shivchacha Eloheinu.
Le'emush Le'olam Ba'ed. Ki Melech Gadol B'Kadosh Ata Baruch Ata Adonai
V'shmo.
El HaKadosh.
Amen. You may be seated. Page 236.
Mikam Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz Tiferet
Gedulah.
Yeshua Yom Menucha Kedusha Lemecha Natzata Abraham Yagel Yitzchak Yiranen Yaakov Uvanav Yanuchu Bo Menuchat Avan Daba Menuchat Emet Ve'emuna Menuchat Shalom V'Shalva V'Ashket V'Vetach Menucha Shalema Shata Rotzei Ba'ah Yakiru Vadecha V'Yedu Ki Mitcha Hi Menuchatam Ve'al Menuchatam Yakdishu Et Shemecha Eloheinu V'lei Avoteinu V'tzei B'Menuchatenu Kadshin B'mitzvotecha V'tein Chalkeinu B'Toratecha
Rabbeinu mituvecha.
V'B'Shuvatecha V'taher Libeinu Le'ovdecha Be'emet V'Anchilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'Ratzon Shabbat Kodshecha V'Enuchu B'ach Yisrael Mekadeshei Shemecha Baruch Ata Adonai
V'shmo.
Mekadesh HaShabbat
Amen.
V'tzei Adonai Eloheinu V'Mach Yisrael V'Tfilatam V'Ashevet Avodah L'Pir Beitecha Tfilatam Be'avat Revel V'Ratzon U'Tihil Ratzon Tamid Avodat Yisrael Amecha
V'techassenana eineinu.
Al Tzion Berachamim Baruch Ata Adonai Machazir Shechinata L'Tzion
Odim anachnu la. Shataodan v'vetinu Elohei kol basar yosinus yobeship rachov v'adonai shavah gadol v'kedusha al shachenu v'kimatanu.
Hatov ki lo chalu rachamecha Hamrachem ki lo tamu chasarecha Me'olam ki binu la'ach Ve'al kulam Yivarach v'yitroma Am shimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam ba'ed V'chol ha'chaim yidu chasela Ve'elo shimcha be'emet Elishuotinu ve'ezrateinu sela Baruch Ata Adonai
Amen.
Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha
Tasim leolam. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha. Tasim leolam.
Ki ata melech adon
Lecho
hashalom. Ki ata melech adon
Lecho hashalom. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha. Tasim leolam. Shalom Rabba Yisrael Amcha. Tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך.
Shalom
רבה ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רבה ישראל עמך תשים לעולם.
Baruch atah Adonai, Mavarech et Amo Yisrael b'shalom.
Amen. Page 247, we rise as we're able. Kaddish Shalom.
Yitkaral dikara shemei rabba.
Amen.
Amad divrach chirutei v'mlich malchutei v'chai chonah v'mechon v'chai nechol beit Yisrael b'gala b'zman kari v'imeru.
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Ne'omei Omaya Yitbarach
Barach v'yishtabach v'yibarach v'yitnaseh v'yidrav v'yidlav v'yitalal shmei nekudeshav.
Richu.
Le'elam yichol v'chadav v'shiratat shvachatav v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imeru.
Amen.
Yikabel tzlotarot ha'nechol Yisrael kodam avachon v'yishmaya v'imeru.
Amen.
Yehi shlom ha'rava mimshmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru.
Amen.
Yaseh shalom mibrama v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru.
Amen.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol.
Atekinu liotzer Breshit Shelosanu k'goyei haratzot Lo samanu k'mishpachot hadama Shelo sam chelkenu kahem V'gor aleinu k'cho hamonam.
V'anachnu korim משתחווים ומודים לבני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Okay, neka v'chadonai Eloheinu. Shemo echad.
ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. On page 249, we turn to the mourner's Kaddish. We invite those who mourn, those observing yahrzeit, we who would join their prayer to remain standing. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah meforach l'olam amei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipoar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kudsha brichu la'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Yishar koach to Daniel Silverman for leading us in Minhah, to Lauren Hennick as always for reading Torah. I think we're going to break now for Seudah Shlisheet, which is in the boardroom in the Herman Hall. We're going to the Herman Hall for Seudah Shlisheet. We're going to reconvene here around 8:30 for our plenary program. So if you're joining us online, come back at 8:30. If you're joining us in person, come back at 8:30. I think the message is, come back at 8:30. Shabbat shalom, Chag Sameach.
The freezer was well enough stocked that it kept it cold?
But no damage on the property, no.
They had one tree, at the cottage that snapped probably about 15 feet up. And it's a bit of a pitfall situation. It's right on top of the steps of the tree. So we might have left it up. But yeah, I think it was my mother's first cousin who was on set.
I just know from the Jewish area, because I was in Ottawa last week for a summit with the embassy, and a few different people who were there who were Ottawa people were saying that was on Wednesday and they still didn't have power.
Yeah, that was that.
Yeah. And the caterer didn't have power, which meant that we had cold food, and that's completely fine.
My
And-
parents, those are clearly my parents and people across the street in Ottawa are on different heater ones at some point. Because however long it was, 4 years ago, there was a heater. So parents were across the street. Only been distant for years.
Uh-huh.
I saw an incident somebody on the garage had a big old tree snap up on the seat, high. And instead of taking it down, we got one of those chainsaw sculptors, and they sculpted this thing into a giant pencil. And they're having a festival in the neighborhood to celebrate the unveiling of this pencil. I think it was today. I like that.
The only concern the parents had is that particular tree is where the pulling for the beach with the dock out in the winter. They fall.
Okay, but it's early enough to see if we're going to replace it.
Well, no, it's about finding a suitable
The alternative, right? But they have enough time to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And frankly, it might still be viable. Yeah, it's quite the, we were supposed to, it was 2 weeks ago, right? We were supposed to have had a gathering, such as it was by the time
Are they displaced people? Absolutely. And every time I hear somebody who's sympathetic and refer to it as the Ukraine, you want to say, do you know what you mean when you say the Ukraine? You are actually then saying that it's a territory of. But that's what we call it for so many years.
That was supposed to be helping our students. And I got her name, and I'm all set with points to read what we're going to do in the city somewhere. And I've written to her, I haven't come back to her, so she would be defensive, she would be unable to connect, you know, and they, the people who are running this platform for conference called Bringing Students said that during this period, you know, be patient, eventually they'll get to see where they can connect. But, wow. Living with that degree of uncertainty.
We've seen
So there's an organization that we've been funding for many, many years. Somebody who people describe as a woman about it. His name is Father Patrick Dubois. He's a Catholic priest who documented the Holocaust by bullets. And he questions the 6 million figure. He thinks it's closer to 7. And he goes into regions across Europe. And they go in and they interview witnesses to when the Nazis came into their town, granted everybody took them into the streets. And he can't wear his collar in Paris, which is where he's based. He's a faculty at Georgetown. That's where he spends most of his time now. But they had been doing a lot of work in Ukraine, documenting the Holocaust story. So they quickly pivoted, and they found people through social media where they're documenting the atrocities that are happening now. And it's social media that are leading them to the first people. And the first people that they found.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, is that even what
Really involved now. It's actually
know.
Michael O'Brien. And so they're trying to build peace in Ukraine.
So you had fun
Yeah,
for
he truly is. Truly, truly.
we got to see some of that. Dina's the master of and then whose wedding was in New York?
Jackie and Ruby
Sorry?
the construct, Nikki, Simon.
Oh, that's great.
And clearly, you eventually made it home.
I did.
I hear you got stuck for a night.
Yeah, but you know, my feeling is I'd rather be stuck in New York for a night than stuck on a plane with the lights on.
That is true.
Yeah, why don't you come up?
Are we masking or are we unmasking for this?
Well, to speak, I think we have to not.
Hello? Hello?
Having an allergy crisis from dust from the construction.
Wait, yeah, there's a lot of building going on there. Okay, why don't you sit here, Chelsea? Okay, so good evening. We're running on Jewish Standard Time, but we're still a little bit early because Jewish Standard Time is 15 minutes late. We're only 11 minutes late, 10 minutes late. So we're doing all right. We want to thank everyone for being here with us in person, and certainly for those that are joining us online, thank you for being with us as well. The theme for Shavuot is Panim el Panim. It's the same theme that we had for Rosh Hashanah, and it's really been the theme, not so much of a theme, but I think a value that we've been working towards as a community, certainly during COVID, and when we chose that as our theme for Rosh Hashanah, we were hoping that at Rosh Hashanah we'd be further along in terms of coming out of COVID than we were at that time, and feels like we're actually getting closer to coming out of it at this time. But the notion of Panim el Panim was really an expression, a reminder of the importance of face-to-face, in-person relationships, and the craving and the challenge that we've all had over the last 2+ years of managing through this global pandemic. We use all these fancy words like, physically distant but spiritually near. And the challenge for a sacred community is how to take those words and turn it into action and have it be something real. And we thought that it was a good way to kind of bracket this year from Rosh Hashanah to Shavuot with this theme, and to spend this evening kind of reflecting on the ways in which that has occurred. And it's occurred because of the tremendous ingenuity, commitment, entrepreneurialism, and caring of human beings in this community for other human beings through the acts of chesed. If we've had any success over the last 2 years of maintaining a sense of connection and caring, it's because we've been blessed with a community that takes those values seriously and has worked very, very hard on how we maintain that during this period of challenge. This evening, we're going to have a conversation with two of those entrepreneurs, those social entrepreneurs of physical distance but spiritual closeness through the work that they did by seeing an opportunity and a need, and not really asking permission for doing it, but asking for help in terms of how do we make this happen and impacting other people's lives. So what we'll do is we're going to start, this is all softball. It's like both of them reached out to me. Are you going to ask like really hard questions?
Do I have to prepare a speech?
And Judy asked me just a few minutes ago if I was going to ask her, things related to math, which she could probably do because she like prepares people for their SATs and other standardized tests. I'm not going to ask any math questions. Because this is really designed to be a conversation. What I'd like to do is just start by introduce yourself to all of us that are here, and share with us the project that you're talking about tonight, and a few sentences about how you became involved in that particular project. So Judy, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I'm Judy Libman, and the project that I've been doing, is it not on?
It's on.
It's on. Now you can hear me? Okay, should I start again? Judy Libman. This mic is right up in my nose.
I have to apologize if I start sneezing. I'm allergic to the road construction dust in the neighborhood, so I've got the Kleenex. Anyway, the project that I've been running, and I was surprised on Thursday afternoon when the group and I were talking about it, and I didn't realize how long we had been going, and they said, no, it's almost a year and a half. So I went back and looked at my calendar, and we started in February of 21. And this was not my brainchild. This was somebody, maybe you, maybe Yaakov, who said, we're going to run some tea time programs. And that was how it was originated. Was it you, Lorraine?
It was Lorraine.
Okay.
We were sitting in my backyard, I think, right?
Yeah, okay. And so whoever it was, maybe Lorraine, called me and said, would you do this? And then it was up to me to figure out what I wanted to do. So I made something up. And I had, the idea was to have a Zoom connecting kind of group once a week with seniors who otherwise were not having much of an opportunity to be with other people. And there were no requirements for joining. It was just, come and join us, we'll have a good time. And I got to invent what we were going to do. So I had been watching some videos on the Forward, you know, the Yiddish newspaper, the Forward, their website, and they have a whole list of Yiddish cooking videos, which are hilarious, and they're with subtitles. So even if your Yiddish is a bissel not so good, you can follow along, and it's really quite delightful. And so I said, let's call this Es Gesundheit, eat in good health. And so we decided, I didn't know how the group was going to come together, but let's start with a thing and end with another thing. And in between, we'll see how it turns out. So I got to pick. So Yiddish cooking show at the beginning, ballet at the end. You know, if I was in charge, I got to pick what I wanted to pick. And then it's just taken off from there. We can talk more about how that's developed.
Chelsea?
Okay, my name is Chelsea Wolf. Can you hear me, Paul? There we go.
I think with these microphones, you have to eat them.
Okay, lovely. Can you hear me a little bit better now? My name is Chelsea Wolf. The program that I'm involved with is also for seniors. Seniors that, I think it started in the summer of, 2019, by a student, right? And so it was, the program, it was for seniors that couldn't get out of the house or were too afraid, possibly. So it's a challah delivery every Friday. And I took it over when I came back from a year spent in Nova Scotia. So it would be April 2020. And I think I called Yaakov and said, look, I'm back. I want to donate my time. Is there anything that I can do? And he said, well, we have a program that a student had started. She's back in school, so why don't you take this program over? And that's how I got involved. So every Shabbat, I have a few volunteers that help me out, and we take challah to our seniors. But, you know, it's not about delivering challah. It's about making a connection, saying hello, how are you doing? Do you need anything? And I've been lucky enough to make some friendships. Raina's sitting right there. We've become quite close. And that's part of community. It's, some people didn't want to have a chat, but just knowing that the shul cares enough that someone shows up at their door, or if they did want to have a chat or had a bad week, anything and everything. And it's about the connection and face-to-face connection. So I think it was just such an important program throughout COVID. And it's just carried on, not to say that COVID's over, but, you know, the worst of it. So anybody that wants it can have it. Yeah.
So Chelsea, as you said, the challah delivery is not about the challah.
No.
How long does one of these deliveries take on average?
It just depends. It depends, like, every now and then, it's just me delivering, and I'm lucky enough with the work that I do that I can clear a day and just do it myself. So sometimes that happens, so it can be a full day. But other times, I have volunteers, like four or five, and, it's a couple hours out of your day. Like an hour and a half each. Yeah. Depending on how long you chat, then it could be a couple hours.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to know is like how long are some of these chats? I mean, people should understand.
Oh, I
that,
can
that
chat.
We're not talking about challah delivery here.
Right.
We're talking about chatting deliveries.
45 minutes to an hour, yeah.
Yeah. And how many people are receiving challah at this time?
On the list, there's 80, but per week it's probably 30, 40, sometimes more. Yeah.
Is there a story that you can share with us about an especially meaningful encounter in the delivery?
There's so many. There's really so many. I can't tell you how many times people will say how it saved them during COVID.
Say that more clearly.
How it saved them during COVID, and I've had those words said to me with tears in their eyes, and that many times, and just the importance. So that's why it's become such a passion for me, because for something that on first blush could seem so simple, it can, save lives. Mental health during COVID, I mean, it's just been an incredible program that we offer.
Judy, you said that you were making this up when you first started.
Yeah.
How has Es Gesundheit developed from a year and a half ago to today?
Well, at the beginning, I wasn't sure how the group would interact. I wasn't sure how much of a program I would have to organize. I spent a lot of time worrying about it, basically doing lesson plans in my head. How are we, if there's a lull in the conversation, what are we going to do? Within a short while, Raina's laughing. Within a short while, what happened was that the thing that was supposed to start at 4 o'clock, people said, we're going to sign in at 10 to 4 so we can schmooze before we officially get started.
Before the official schmooze.
Before the official schmooze, we'll do a pre-schmooze.
That's kind of like the pre-schmooze took the place of the after meeting in the parking lot, basically.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that came out on Thursday, I asked the group, there were, I think, 12 of us on Thursday, and I said, what should I say? Tell me what I should be saying. And one of the things that came out was that the Zoom services are great, and people appreciate the fact that they've been able to carry on and go to shul on Zoom. What's missing when you go to shul on Zoom
is Kiddush.
That's Kiddush and Kiddush Club, but the schmoozing. And some of us come to shul at least as much for the schmoozing as for the davening, and that's been gone. That's been missing. And so what this group has felt is that this has replaced that, this has added to it. And several people said, there were all these faces that I kind of knew from shul. I could say hello to them, I could say hello at the Kiddush, but I didn't know them. And now we're friends. So it's had that kind of an impact on the closest. And some of the people in our group were new to the shul, or even new to Toronto. And that this was, even in, the hyper problematic isolation, this for them was an entree into this, and everybody said this has created a community.
Yeah.
Lorraine.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's so Canadian of you to begin a sentence with an apology.
The two of them are so, I needed that.
Not in the room, so people at home can hear you.
There's people watching from
Oh,
home.
thank you. I just felt I needed to sort of share with everybody. Judy and Chelsea make it sound so easy and maybe a little flip, and they didn't do too much to get ready. But I need to tell you that that is not so. The leaders that were chosen were absolutely exceptional. We didn't know how exceptional they were, but
Yes, we did.
we did, yeah. We knew they were exceptional. We didn't know they were extraordinary.
There you go.
But the truth of the matter is that there's a management of the group and the process, and a kindness and a compassion. There's extra stuff there, real chen, and that is an ingredient that one shouldn't discount in this. Judy is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant teacher. She knows what it takes. And so I think that's part of the magic as well. And it is exceptional. It is really quite exceptional.
Raina, you look like you want to say something too.
When the Tea Time for Seniors first started, I was facilitating a group on culture, and I didn't have very many attendees. And it was a good news, bad news for me because, like Lorraine said, took a tremendous amount of preparation to be able to keep the conversation going. That there weren't a lot of participants wasn't so terrible, because then I got the privilege of joining Judy's group, which was at the same time of day. And at the time, I was very upset that I couldn't do both. So I got the best of both worlds, and everything that Lorraine has said is amazing. Is you have 12 people, and who referred to it the other day as the Hollywood Squares, right? And Judy just facilitates, because let's face it, we all like to talk, and everybody wants to talk at the same time, and Judy coordinates it so beautifully that it's fantastic. And as for the challah delivery, I was a participant when Lorraine's granddaughter started it for just a couple of months. And I'm one of the people, I've talked to Chelsea about this, that I had somebody deliver to me at one point in time who would open the car window and hand me the challah and drive off. And that was not acceptable for me. I actually said, you have to switch me to somebody else's list, because I live alone and I wanted somebody, even for 5 minutes, just to say hello and chat with me. And it wasn't the challah. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm physically able and I could go out and buy a challah. But it was knowing that Friday morning somebody was coming to my building, and then we either meet outside or we met in the lobby, and it was just a privilege. And one of the people who delivered to me challah, one day I said, I really like the mask that you're wearing. The next time he brought me a mask, which wasn't quite as good as when Hannah, Lorraine's granddaughter, made masks, and I admired the mask, and the next week she showed up with a handmade mask for me. So these are all part of what it's all about.
What surprised you from being involved in these projects?
Maybe the need for connection, more so than what I had ever anticipated or thought. And maybe we go about our lives, whether it's COVID, not COVID, and we just don't think of each other. And I have lack of words here. We don't think of one another maybe enough in terms of understanding that just saying hello, taking the time to talk with one another, slowing down a little bit, and I'm not good for that myself, slowing down. But just the need for those things in our lives, and I think COVID really put a spotlight on that, especially to certain parts of our community, which are seniors or people who are sick.
I think I was surprised by the fact that I needed that connection too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Me
It
too.
wasn't just, for others. It was really helpful for me And if I was going through a low point or having anxiety about, the news and whatever, this grounded me. And this was a group of friends who, this group developed into friends. And people, came and went, and some people were there, and then they left, and then they came back. We actually have one member who's in California. My cousin in Irvine, California, joins us sometimes. He's a senior, he's alone, he's not in the best of health, and so when he comes, he probably doesn't care so much when we're talking about what's new on Bathurst. But, one of the nice things about Zoom is it doesn't matter where you are. So we've had people who've been joining us, including me, from Florida, from Las Vegas, from wherever. And
That was Jerry.
Jerry was in Las Vegas. Yeah, we got the whole blow-by-blow about. Yeah. So it's panim al panim, but with some surprising flexibility around that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
People can be anywhere. And once you've established those connections, I don't have to actually deliver a challah. But I think that once you've established the connections, the community is still there. And wherever people actually are at that time matters less. I think we're all finding that that's one of the weird positive elements to COVID. Thank God for Zoom. I don't know who invented Zoom. No one's ever found out who
Should have
invented
bought shares. Should have bought shares.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Same for me. Like, I was surprised how much I needed it as well, the connection. And I remember so I grew up in Nova Scotia, so I'm not from here. And my folks had called, or my father called, said, I think you should come for a month while COVID passes, because, I think your mother will feel a lot better if you're here. So I stayed a year. So when I came back, it was almost like kind of reestablishing myself. I was not alone, but it helped me a lot too, in terms of my own need for connection, that I didn't realize that it was going to fill that, for me as well. So I was really surprised, pleasantly. Yeah.
What's the impact of this being something through the synagogue community as opposed to something outside of that community, right? I mean, and obviously the challah aside, right? Because that's a little obvious. But does it make a difference that this was happening through a synagogue community, or do you think the same would have happened if it took place in any other kind of context?
No, I think programs like this is like a glue for community, right? It's. Programs like this, it's like glue for a community. It's you start talking to people you might not talk to. It's like I said, it brings people together, and through the community, maybe we wouldn't have talked or as much, but now we do. It brings people closer together, and I think that's important. I don't think that it would be as impactful outside of our community.
One of the ways that we know people come together in a shul and turn it into a community of friends and people who know one another instead of just a big building with lots of members. A very common experience that people have is meeting one another during a year that they're saying Kaddish. And it's a random assortment of people who just happen to be in that same place through a year of saying Kaddish. And I know, and you know, so many people who report that that was a formative experience for them. That was the thing that bonded them with others in the shul community, and that was what changed their relationship with the shul. And I think in some ways this has been a similar experience. There's been this time of upheaval and adversity and uncertainty and fear and all of those negative things, and we've been able to within the context of a shul, so that it's grounded in a kind of a Jewishness setting. It's been a similar kind of thing, that bonding process through that kind of time.
How do you see these programs developing, continuing? What, if any, is going to be the impact as, God willing, we do start coming out of this, we do start re-engaging for in-person experiences? What do you see as the future? What's on the horizon for Challah and for Eskazut Tehei?
Well, the Forward has to come up with some more Jewish cooking shows. We've run through, we've been doing, and I've been trying to time the blintzes for Shavuot and, Humintashen at the right time. And we've run the gamut. So I think, first of all, the Forward has to come up with some new shows. So we are actually...
I know the editor and chief of the Forward, so I'll give her a call.
Can you put in a good word?
I'll put in a word. Maybe we'll get her on.
Actually,
maybe I'll get her on Conversations Over Coffee, or we'll bring her on.
Would you? Because we tried to do that. I tried to contact the two women, the Yiddish editor and her sidekick, and said, "Will you be our guest stars?" We occasionally have guest stars. We've had Rav Baruch join in from Jerusalem, and so we've done stuff like that. But they never wrote back to me, which I was very disappointed about. But if you can put in a word.
Well, Jody Rudorin is the editor-in-chief, and she's a former USY leader and was the New York Times Jerusalem chief for a correspondent for a while. So
well, see what you can do.
Yeah, I'll give her a call.
Yeah, and the group has decided that we're not disbanding, but we're taking the summer off. And we are on this Thursday, our group is actually getting together in human form in Rabbi Feyerbodson's backyard. And so I think we're very excited to actually see one another in 3 dimensions.
One second. Chelsea?
As long as I can keep the program going, it'll go. And anyone who wants to volunteer, just call me.
So I just want to, before we get to questions and comments from those that are here, I just want to ask Chelsea, there are 80 people on the list. Are we only able to deliver 30 and 40 because of the number of volunteers that we have?
No, it fluctuates.
It fluctuates?
Yeah. So anybody that wants it gets it, whether I'm the only one delivering or not.
Okay. And if you had more people, it wouldn't matter.
No,
It just makes it easier on you.
Yeah. But so it's 80 people originally signed up. So I check in, and some people say yes that week, some people say no. It changes, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Questions and comments from our studio audience. Lorraine. Wait for Phil
Thank
Donahue. He's coming.
My experience also tells me or shows me that there's a trust, because it's a shul community, there seems to be an easier way to trust. It seems to be an easier way to trust. And I think people break down the barriers, their own personal barriers, a little quicker or a little sooner. And I have found it to be a non-judgmental community, kind, caring. It's just been a perfect story. The thing is to take it and to use it for young families now, because maybe the prescriptor is not the same for young families. It certainly worked for a senior component of the community, for sure.
It's related to our overall strategy for small groups, right? That you bring people together around shared affinities and goals, and then you empower them to do that work themselves. And Lorraine, I want to call out and lift up the comment you said about trust from already being part of a community. when you enter a community like Bet Tzedek, you know that the other people that are entering it, at least at some level, have something shared and in common. And I think you're right. That's part and parcel of what it makes it a little bit easier to convene people, because there's already an element of familiarity, even if we don't yet know each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I just
yeah, please,
add
of
a
course.
little bit? So, a couple other things that my group told me I should say. One is that they because I threw the ballet thing in, for me, they all started to talk about cultural things as well. And there was a lot of sharing around that, and people who didn't think they liked ballet really got into it. People started sharing other things, theater and books that they'd read and whatever. And so I think you're right. It starts, you've got the shared experience, but then it doesn't stay in its box. It's not just Jewish things. Everything in that context is fair game. And
everything is Jewish.
And I want you to know that this group has actually developed a new law of Kashrut.
Chicken is parv? What?
No. Although that's not bad. No, this is because Jerry, who cooks, when we were trading recipes and commenting on recipes, he said he has a rule that nothing that he makes can have more than 7 ingredients. So we now have that as one of our laws of kashrut.
You know, that's a great idea for a cookbook.
Yeah.
The Bet Tzedek 7 recipe cookbook.
7 ingredients.
7 ingredients cookbook.
7 ingredients, yeah.
I think we should put together a cookbook for that. With the
With a
foreword by
by
Jerry.
Yeah.
The editor of the foreword. We'll get Jody to write the foreword. Okay, Aaron.
Oops, I think I just broke my mask. Thank you. So, first of all, kol hakavod to both of you, because it's just amazing, amazing work. Judy, I am specifically hearing you talk about your realization about how much you needed the socialization, the community part, and how, you talk about being in shul, and so there's davening, but they're seeing people. So for me, I know that was something that was a tremendous eye-opener, that I had been someone who was a weekly shul goer for most of my life, and I could never have appreciated how just tremendously challenging it was to miss out on that on a weekly basis through COVID. And I wonder, when you talk about the food component, so now that we're starting to transition to more in-person things, have you considered maybe doing some of your meetings, I don't know, have like a monthly get-together meal sort of thing, something like that? Like, is this the sort of thing where you would want to start to make it a regular in-person, or at least periodic sort of thing, just to be able to really enhance the in-person experience now that Zoom isn't always so necessary?
I think we'll see. I think that has a lot of appeal. We're taking the summer off, and if we've all learned one thing, it's that you can't make predictions about what things are going to be like 2 months from now. So we will, the group wants to stay together, wants to carry on. We will keep doing that, and we'll figure out if if we add some components to it, depending on what the situation is, but also, of course, depending on the mobility of the participants, and we'll see. But I agree with you that doing things like that could be a...
Well, let's get...
I just want to comment to that I already suggested last Thursday that Jerry invite us to his place for a barbecue.
Oh, yeah, we're working
He's
on it.
always raving about his backyard and things, so
All right. Jerry, if you're watching, we're all coming over next week, 7 p.m. Sunday.
7 items, all with 7
7
ingredients or
items
less.
at 7 p.m., 7 ingredients. We got it. 2 groups of 7.
There you go. I want to get back, Reb Steve, to the comment you made about what both of these programs have done as far as building off the community and the synagogue. And one of the things that I've been trying to focus on is what are the COVID silver linings? And I think that one of the COVID silver linings that I have seen is that Zoom requires you to put a name at the bottom. And my mother, Judy, I think everybody here knows that we kind of go together, yeah, exactly. She would always say to me, you know, one of the things that was common for me is if you were a regular shul goer, there were people who became very familiar, probably didn't know their name, and they became familiar enough that it became, you were past the point where you could ask their name. Like, then it got awkward. And my mother would see a name and she'd say, who's that person? I'd say, oh, you know them. And I would explain where they sat and who they sat with on Shabbat and like try and sort of triangulate. And one of the things that I assume, Chelsea, that you've now had is a list of 80 people where in various permutations over the weeks you've actually been able to put a name to a face. Yep. And all of the volunteers who were involved and all of the people on your Thursday group who I get to, you know, there've been a couple times where I've walked behind my mother and waved at everybody and you get to see the names and that's one of the things that I hope is a COVID silver lining, that we find a way to carry that into the new normal where we can actually literally put names to faces, which takes what is a community that is comfortable to that next step where you actually say, oh, that's Judy Libman. Oh, okay.
So let me ask you and everyone here. So one of the things that some members of our leadership are talking about are name tags for the congregation. And I've seen this in other places. In fact, the shul that Jody and I belonged to before we came here, they had actually nice name tags. Not like this, but I mean, they were, that's not to say these aren't nice name tags, but I'm saying where your first name is Rabbi. But this is one of the reasons why we wear these. One is for people that are guests, so they can identify who are the leadership of the shul. But they had name tags for everybody, and they were in those plastic shelving units by alphabetical groups. And if you were someone who came to shul regularly, that was over here, so it was a little bit easier to find. And if you're someone who came less regularly, it was in another section, but it was still there. So we're talking about that as a way of taking the Zoom name tag forward. I just want to get a sense, if we did that, do you think people would wear them?
Yeah, I think
You
so.
think people would wear them? Okay. Well, some would and some wouldn't. But would enough people wear them to make it worth the expense and the effort to do it?
Yes.
Right?
My husband would like to suggest that some sharp kid find a way of getting people's foreheads to light up with their names.
Yeah. That's called the Google glasses.
Yeah.
Okay. Riva and then Rabbi Friar Batson. Do you have to use your on the name tags? No.
Again, actually, Riffy, welcome to the. Can you everybody hear me without?
No, but there's people watching online, so they won't be able to hear you without the microphone.
Okay, yes, I think name tags are a really good idea, especially for people like me, where everybody gets my name wrong. It's Rivy.
It's Rivy.
That's first of all.
Okay.
Secondly, though, the thing that does drive me crazy is that You see people, sometimes you haven't seen them for a few months, and they always expect you to know who they are, always. I always introduce myself, and I think that's a good practice for everybody. With a name tag, you wouldn't need that, because you just say, here, my name is Rivi, or my name is Reb Steve, or my name is Judy, or Chelsea. So I think it's a really, really good idea. And then also that means that we're not embarrassed. Oh gosh, I don't remember that person's name, or they assume that I know exactly who they are. After 2 years of COVID, no, I may, and especially with everybody wearing masks.
Yeah.
No, I may not recognize you. I'll give you an example. I was working in elections on Thursday, and one of the women came in with a mask, so all you could see were her eyes and her hair. And it wasn't until I saw her name that I realized, oh, this is my cousin. So yes, name tags would be a fantastic idea.
Right. Thanks, Rivi. I
kinda
remember
like it.
your last name, though, because of Billy Joel, so I don't know why. I connect you with Billy Joel.
I wish we were related.
Amen. Rabbi.
When you're involved in the work that you do, you on Thursdays and you on Friday, are you just doing it, or do you have at the back of your head, I'm doing chesed work right now, I'm doing chesed work? Or are you just so engaged in it that that part leaves for a bit and you're just present?
I'm fairly present. You know, I'm in the moment with the, you know, I know what I'm doing, and I know it means something to people, and yeah, very present. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels different to me than the thing that I otherwise do, working with university students or high school students. You know, that's a, you know, my professional relationships. And that can be very deeply involving, but this has that overlay. This does feel like it has that quality to it. And there's a joy in doing it. I think one of the things that sounds like you and I are absolutely in sync on this, that this is serious fun. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best way to do anything. If it can be serious, fun, and the serious part is that it's really for a purpose. There's something really
It's for a
important
purpose.
happening, and then it should be fun.
Any additional questions or comments? Last call.
I think I know what my name tag should be.
What should your name tag be?
Chelsea, the challah girl.
Yeah.
Chelsea the challah girl.
And I think the other part of having name tags is you can skip over the what's your name and get right to the really Jewish thing, which is who are you related to?
Yeah, so now it's not just name tags, but you need your genealogy coming down here too.
We did that for our daughter's wedding. We made name tags for one of the events, and everybody was, you know, this is Caroline's first cousin. This is.
Well, it's like Google. It's like the Google glasses. It pulls up not only your name tag, but your the mishpacha, your LinkedIn account, and so forth.
Yeah.
Let me just end with a little bit of a riff of the question that Rabbi Friar Batson asked, and that is we're doing this on the holiday of Shavuot. On the holiday of Shavuot, we have the Minhah also of reading from Megillat Ruth, from the Scroll of Ruth. And I'm likely to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, and that is the connection between Chesed and Shavuot. The rabbis, one of the many things that they say is that the Torah begins with Chesed and it ends with Chesed. It begins with the Chesed of the creation of the world, the creation of human beings, and it ends with a Chesed of Moshe as he's passing. The message, I think, that the rabbis want to say in that is that derech eretz kadma l'Torah, that the way in which we treat other people, the way in which we act, the chesed that we bring to the world is the essence of Torah. There's no Torah without chesed, is one of the messages that they want to say. And certainly what the two of you have shared with us today from your work and on Monday, we're going to recognize many people in the congregation who've been involved in volunteerism and in chesed, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the hundreds of people, almost 200 volunteers that are involved with Bet Tzedek in one way, shape, or form, that bring chesed into the world, that bring a Torah of chesed into the world. So we want to thank both of you for that and for sharing your experiences with us this evening. We want to encourage you to participate in some way, shape, or form in any of the chesed that is already underway within the synagogue, and especially if you have an idea for something that you think is missing and for which there is a need, and you want to take a role in helping make that chesed a reality, contact Yaakov Fruchter, or contact Judy Libman, who's also in charge now of our volunteer coordination, and we will be there to support you in making that happen, because as the rabbi said, Torah begins and it ends with chesed. That's why we're here. So we're going to end this now. We're going to wait about 3 or 4 minutes before we start Maariv, because we called that for 9:30. We want to thank everyone for being with us. We want to thank the two of you again. Shavuot Tov and Chag Sameach.
For those of you in the room, if we could leave this part of the room in this orientation, and you could stay here for Maariv or use other parts of the room. For those who are online, great time for grabbing a drink, a snack, bathroom, whatever it is, and we'll reconvene for Maariv in a few minutes.
Anybody else freezing? I'm freezing. Are you freezing? I'm so cold. I'm like an iceberg. Can we fix that? I can't hear you, Gary. I know, but you can. I spent 8 years in LA and Miami.
They say wine and cheese, but I get wine and yeah, I guess oh, yeah, wine and cheese, that's for sure. Is he waving to me? Oh.
Page 28? 28? Is anybody else a little chilly, or is it just me? Okay, we're going to get that looked at. I am freezing. All right, my friend. 28?
Yeah. Don't you have a book?
All right, everybody. Let's get a Siddur. They're blue. What?
Her microphone's on. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's wrong?
He's asking if your microphone's on. It's definitely on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can they hear me?
Maariv
Yeah, okay.
for festival evenings. Oh my God, it is freezing in here. If someone can talk to someone to fix it, that would be really great. I don't know if it's freezing so we stay awake, but it's a little too cold in here. Maariv for festival evenings begins on page 28. Please rise as we begin with Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu את אדוני המבורך. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Leolam Vaed.
You may be seated.
Umavir Yom Uve Laila Mavdil Ben Yom Uven Laila Adonai Tzevot Shemo El Chai Vekayam Taminim Loch Aleinu Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai HaMaariv Aravim.
Amen.
Ahavat Olam
Page 29.
Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu bahem nege yomam v'layla ve'ahavatecha al tasim imenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech Uv'shokbecha, uv'kumecha, uv'shartam leot al yadecha, ve'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'isharecha, ve'hayim shamoa tishmeu, el mesotai asher anachim v'zvetchem hayom, ve'havad adonai lechem. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Emet Bemena Kosob Lekayam Aleinu Kira Eloheinu Venezuela Umalchuto benatzon kibalu alehem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira besimcha rabah ve'amru chulam
Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi chamocha rabba kodesh narati lo tosef eleh.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ruvanecha bokeh yam lifnei Moshe, ze eli anu ve'amru. Adonai yimloch leolam vaed.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
We're on page 33.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום העמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופרסמנו סגת שלומך וקנאים את זה טובה מפניך הושיענו למען שמך כי שמענו הצילנו אתה כי על מלכנו ברוך אתה ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Amen. We rise in the middle of page 34 as we proclaim the festival as we're able, followed by Chatzi Kaddish and then the Amidah on page 41b. There's a few places where we recite words just for Shavuot, and there also is a special on Saturday night add paragraph. That'll be on page 41b. Read the instructions carefully right after the Chatzi Kaddish.
וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ועלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלו בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמך תקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתם ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא באמרו אמן.
If you have not yet finished your Amidah, take the time that you need to continue at your own pace. Kaddish Shalem is on page 48.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. ועלמא דברה, יורתיה ומלכמכותיה בחייכון ויומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמך רבה מברך, לעולם
ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ותשמע מתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמרן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
יתקבל צלון הון ובאת ההון לכל ישראל קודם אבו נשמיה ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
יהי שלמה רבה משמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
עושה שלום ממרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. We continue on page 50 with the special Kiddush for this evening.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagefen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am ורוממנו מכל הלשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ועתידן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה מועדים לשמחה חגים וזמנים לששון את יום חג השבועות הזה זמן מתן תורתנו מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים מועדי קודשך בשמחה ובששון הנחתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל והזמנים.
Amen.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מאורי האש. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המבדיל בין קודש לחול בין אור לחושך בין ישראל לעמים בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה בין קדושת שבת לקדושת יום טוב הבדלת ואת יום השביעי מששת ימי המעשה קידשת הבדלת וקידשת את עמך ישראל בקדושתך ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לקודש.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
אמן. והגיענו לשבועות, חג שמח. He's still going. It's going to keep him up, all the sugar. We continue with Aleinu on page 51.
I wasn't sure if you heard. He was asking what day of the Omer it is.
What day of the Omer? Oh, that's funny.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'teit gerula liotzer bereshit shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korehim u'mishtachavim u'modim לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נותן שמיים יעשה את הארץ ומשה וקרא שמיים ממעל כי אדוני הוא אלוהים השמיים ממעל והארץ מתחת אין עוד על כן נקבל לך אדוני אלוהינו לראות מהרה ודבר עוזך להרגביר כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולם תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו, ושמו echad.
On the 6th of Sivan, corresponding to the first day of Shavuot, we remember with love Sydney Ivan Axler, Morris Barish, Arkady Bolkovich, Isaac Chapnick, Sarah Cooperberg, Jacob Glassman, Eve Goodman, Gary Kay, Samuel Mandel, Nathan Mindrowski, Abe Orenstein, Minerva Rapp, Esther Rappaport, Andrew Reich, Freda Samuels, Nathan Stahl, Beverly Stern, Dr. Jack Teichman, Pauline Eurovitz. Are there other people in the room who have a yurtzeit whose name I did not mention? We invite all of those observing a yurtzeit or those mourning to join me in reciting the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 52. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrach Yerutei Ve'yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon uvyamechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mevorach leolam ulomei omaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yasher Koach to Cantor Sydney Ezer for bringing us into the festival of Shavuot. For all of you watching at home, Chag Sameach, Laila Tov. We'll be back at 9:30 tomorrow. If you're nearby, come visit us. We'll be here for a few more hours tonight learning. And for the rest of you, we're going to do a little musical chair so our bodies move, and we're moving to where, Daniel? I just don't want to be this far away from people, so let's go back over there to where we were just before. All right, that's it. Oh, and we will conclude with Yigdal. That's what we need Lorne for. He reminds us of the simple things that we forget when we're really excited.
Page 53.
Yigdal Elohim chai ve'yishtabach nimsa ve'enet el metziuto echad ve'en yachid ke'ichudo ne'elam ve'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut hagub ve'ein ogub Lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'en reshit lereshito hino adon olam v'chol notzar yoreh gedulato u'malchuto sheva nevuato netano el anshe segulato v'tifarto lo kam be'Yisrael כמו שעון נביא ומביט את תמונתו Torah demet natan le'amoel al yad nevio neman beito lo yachalif ha'el velo yamir dato leolamim lezulato Sofe veyodea setareinu mabin lesof davar bekadmato gomel leish chesed kemifalo noten lerasha rak herishato Yishlach leketz hayamin meshichenu livdon mechake ketz Yeshuato Meitim yechayel berov chasto Baruch adei ad shem tehilato Meitim yechayel berov chasto Baruch adei ad shem tehilato Chag Sameach.
We want to invite everyone back over here, please, for the learning. Please return your Sidurim to the cart as you're coming.